Welcome to the Divine Renovation podcast. While the podcast might be on hiatus right now, the Missional Leadership podcast is just launching, and we'd love for you to check it out. And for now, here's a small sample. If you'd like to listen to the whole episode, you'll have to follow us at Missional Leadership Podcast. Enjoy.
So there should be this empowerment for a leader to say, I have to be the one to step up and lead. Now, it doesn't, mean lead alone, which we'll talk about in a minute. But if the pastor doesn't see himself first as the leader on behalf of the diocese, and sometimes in spite of whether the bishop's empowered him or not, then it's going to be tough to lead others.
Today, we're starting off the season with a bang, talking about the 10 ways to destroy parish renewal. Welcome to the Missional Leadership Top 10. Here's your host, Tammy LeBlanc.
Here at Divine Renovation Ministry, we speak a lot about the things that you need to do in your parish to bring about renewal. But in today's conversation, we're hoping to put a fun twist on that. And we don't want to sound negative, but we're hoping to create a different lens through which you see the things that you might be doing by talking about the things you might be doing to actually destroy renewal in your parish. So I was fortunate to be a parishioner at St. Benedict Parish in the early formative years when they started to embrace renewal. And I had a first-hand seat at a lot of the successes we experienced, but also some of the failures as well. And I think by talking about those failures, it actually helps others to grow. But for today's conversation, I'm inviting Rob McDowell and Matt Regetz into this conversation with me. They happen to be two of our longest-standing coaches and who bring quite a bit of experience with them. So welcome to the conversation, guys.
Hey, Tammy. It's great to be here today.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. And to you, Tammy and Rob, it's good to be with you. And no pressure after that setup.
No, easy sailing from here on out.
Well, I figured after saying that you guys are our most senior coaches, I did a little bit of digging to find out together how many parishes you guys have coached since working with the ministry. So would you guys be surprised to know that together you guys have coached 130 priests?
Wow.
That's got to all be Rob. I
was going to say, I think 6 of those are mine.
Now, no pressure really at all. That's a great lead in.
But it just goes to speak to how far we've come, right? It's no longer the from the trenches, as we like to say, experience of one parish. This is now an insight that we bring from a global perspective.
It is cool, now we've been doing this, to be able to kind of step back and yeah, there's some convictions and beliefs, but now you're starting to be able to observe trends and consistencies and things like that you're able to kind of observe at a little bit more of a global perspective.
Mm-hmm. And as you said that too, Tammy, I realized you checked in with being a member of St. Benedict's Parish. Well, I was a member of Prince of Peace Parish, right? So it's like we all know this from our starting point, and now to see where we've come and to then realize we're not even scratching the surface yet. That's the amazing part, right?
Yeah, and I think it's probably fair to say, would you guys feel that you've grown over the last few years too?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, when you think, when we first started, most of who we started coaching originally was larger, multi-staffed parishes. And over time, we've developed to where you have a single priest with multiple locations, a lot more diversity, rural, inner city, different continents, right? So there's, and you're seeing, renewal happen in all these different contexts. So early on, we had a very kind of narrow focus and experience of who we connected with in the coaching world. And now that's just continued to grow and diversify.
Yeah, and even wondering as I've expanded my coaching reach, like Rob said, to different continents and different cultures, all of a sudden now, I was very insecure. How is Texas going to play in the UK? Now, you'd have to ask them honestly when I'm not in the room, because all I get from them is normally, well, that's very interesting. So interesting can be good or interesting can be bad. But you realize that the cultural context matters. And sometimes we have to start with that, hey, I know you're not my big mega parish in Houston. I know you have unique challenges. I know you don't have the large staffs. But what are the things that are rather consistent, right? What are the principles at play? And even as we're going to talk today, what are the things people are still getting wrong everywhere?
Just to open up this conversation then, how we came about building our list of 10 was we kind of each took a stab at creating our individual list, right? And then we came together and we looked for commonalities, and we thought it would be fun to do a countdown. So we're going to go from 10 to 1 and work our way down through, again, the top 10 things that parishes are doing to destroy renewal in their parishes.
Number 10.
So we're going to start with number 10, which is focusing on change management over culture change. Parishes are focusing so much perhaps on managing all the changes that they're introducing in their parishes to bring about renewal that sometimes they're missing the key component, which is culture.
You know, culture is kind of the nebulous. It's there. You're not sure what to do with it. It's not like it has all these tangible things to like, if you pull this lever, then this happens. And if you stop doing this, this happens. Because I think the most apparent thing for people in renewal is like change management. Like, let's just do some steps. Just tell me what I need to do. And I think in a sense, maybe just to remind us that culture itself can be a thing that we affect. Like, you can affect culture. It's not like we just live in a culture and we have to deal with it and adjust to either fit in or to stay a little countercultural. If we actually believe the premise that we could change culture at a parish. And for some, especially for Catholics, it's like, well, I don't want to change the culture. You know, and maybe to get specific about what we mean around culture change. And it's not just change management. And I think that's what a lot of times people see renewal as, is like, just give me the book and I'll follow some things to make me a better leader somehow.
Yeah, and obviously behaviors and actions go into that, but a lot of times we don't think of culture as kind of reprogramming some of our consistent attitudes and habits and things like that that affect the way people experience the parish, you know. And one of the ways to think about culture is to think about a business that when you walk into, you enjoy visiting that, versus when you walk into a business that you don't enjoy walking into and you don't always know why. That's a cultural issue. And that's the same thing people experience in our parishes. And so when we think about change, starting at that point of recognizing that we don't just need to add a few programs or we just need to do some things differently, that the change is much more fundamental to the overall thinking and attitude and habits of our organization. You know, Father James quite often will quote Peter Drucker that says, you know, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? The old expression that we can say we want to do things differently and we can implement different strategies, but until we truly see the role that culture plays, and as we make our changes, try to actually address culture, there's not going to be any significant or long-lasting change. You can change different things and see, some changes happen in the short term and things like that, but long-term sustained change will not happen without addressing the culture.
Yeah, I just maybe add that some of the resistance to culture change are the people already in the pews. The church is just where they like it. Why change it, right? So if we start affecting the way the overall church feels, the folks that are that are considered paying the bills or paying members or in the club, that's why they're at that parish, because they like the culture just the way it is. But if the culture around them is shrinking or the numbers of members are shrinking and we don't change and we don't affect culture, then where are we going to be for the next group that would call themselves members?
Okay, so help me break open, what does parish culture look like? What does that mean? That's probably not even something that people are connecting with parish life, a culture. What kinds of things are you coaching parishes towards in a healthy culture?
I think a starting point is around like hospitality and welcome. Because so far, the prevailing culture, this probably isn't your parish, but it's some parishes, the prevailing culture is we have deputized ushers at the doors. That's hospitality. That's how we've invested in hospitality. And it's a club that you got to get membership in or be invited by one of the existing ushers. And that's not culture change, right? So if you want to look at hospitality and a culture change, look to how the people in the pews are treating each other. If they're welcoming each other, if they're inviting conversation, like, hey, you're new here, right? Or how long have you been here? Hey, my name's Matt. It's really good to meet you. Do you normally come to this mass? Tell me about your family. Now, I'm not saying right as mass is starting, right? So there's a preference for when that would happen. But when you see culture change around hospitality, It's when the people in the pews are doing it, not just deputized people we put at the doors. That's just an example, a simple example I think is a good starting point for parishes to consider.
Then it becomes not something that they're checking off of a list, which we would equate to change management, versus you're changing the heart of the people, which in turn is driving the culture change because they want better things for their parishioners. They want them to experience like they're being welcomed. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, really at the heart of culture is what values get lived out. You know, not what values do you stick on a wall and say you value, but what values actually, get lived out, because every church is going to say a certain number of things, like we value this, like we value people, and we value people that are outside of a relationship with Jesus. But when you get inside, it's like, no, really what they value is the status quo. Really what they value is everything being the same. Really what, and so there's what actually get lived out. And what gets lived out in your values is actually what is going to form your culture.
This has been a sample of the Missional Leadership Top 10. If you like what you're hearing, follow us at the Missional Leadership Podcast. Thanks for listening.